Welcome into basketball by association. My name is Arky. That is Joel C. Cordes. Joel, hello, sir.
Hey, how's it going, Arky Shea? It's time for the BbA Byte here on
That's
both
right.
YouTube and Spreaker, Spotify, iTunes. And now that I've got the ad out of the way, we can do this thing.
So here's the thing. Like, that was a lot faster than I was expecting. So
Insert that's what she said joke here, but and here
Joel,
we move on.
Come on. Okay, I need my glasses for this first part. The Milwaukee Bucks and the Phoenix Suns will take place in Game 4 of the NBA Finals tonight.
Mm-hmm.
But what I wanted to mention is a quote I wanted to get your thought on from Kendrick Perkins. I don't know if you heard, used to be a basketball player, and now he's a little bit of a salty analyst. But
yes,
he's
little bit is putting it very nicely.
He's got an interesting thought that I want to get your opinion on before I throw out the 2 cents.
All right.
It's about Giannis Antetokounmpo. And he said on whatever NBA show that they got going on right now. Actually, I think it was early in the morning on that first take show that they have. He said, quote, "If Giannis takes it to another level and wins this championship and wins Finals MVP, here's your caveats, then I think we ought to give him the credit as being the best player in the game of basketball, dethrone LeBron James, Kevin Durant, and whoever else," end quote. Joel, I bring it to you, and the only reason I bring it to you because I don't think it's the hottest of hot takes, but let me hear from you what you think of Kendrick Perkins saying that if Giannis is able to pull this off, that clearly would have been a fantastic postseason for him too. And he's already a 2-time MVP, that we may be able to say it's Giannis's world.
Since Kendrick Perk led with caveats, I'm going to lead with caveats. Okay. Kendrick Perkins is one of my least favorite analysts out there because he's been riding the Stephen A. Smith coattails of just being an agitator for agitation's sake to a truly obnoxious degree. Like, Stephen A. has his brand. We know who Stephen A. Smith is. And I'm sorry, Perk, there's only room for one guy like that, especially at a place like ESPN. Like, you have to get your own brand, and salty, fatter version of Stephen A. Smith is not what your brand should be. Like,
why'd you throw in the fatter?
Well, because he's being salty, so I'm going to be salty. So that said, with those caveats out of the way, and I got nothing against Kendrick Perkins, the basketball player, and every once in a while he does have a decent take, just like Stephen A. does. I'll give those guys that credit. They do every once in a while. You're right. This is not like an earth-shattering type of take. However, this goes into the classic Kendrick Perkins litany of takes, which is the short-sightedness of everything. Everything is in the now. Everything is hyperbole, feast or famine, whatever you want to say. This would be way too soon to crown a guy who still does not have a reliable jump shot, who still does not have a reliable free throw game whatsoever, to say he is the best player in the game simply because his team won a championship and he got Finals MVP. By that stupidity of logic, and again, Giannis is an absolutely great player, and now I get to go into my own hyperbole and hot takiness. Giannis is an absolute great player. He is an all-time great already. He will be when it's all said and done. But by that stupidity of logic, Andre Iguodala was the best player in the NBA the year he won Finals MVP. Like, you got to give me more than that, and you got to explain. I'm willing to accept 100% that Giannis is probably the better, more impactful player than LeBron at this point. I am ready to say that. But better and more impactful than Kevin Durant? No.
Okay.
Not even close. Better and more impactful than Steph Curry? I don't even think I can say that yet. And there's a couple of other players like Nikola Jokic, like Joel Embiid this year, that I'm not sure I can say that. Giannis is right there in that conversation with them, but head and shoulders above them based off one championship, which, by the way, the Bucks, like you and I have talked about, have limped and backed into a couple of times and then played really good basketball. And Giannis has played phenomenally by the box score, but not as effectively by the eyeball test when you truly see what impact he's had in some of these games. And you got the free throw bugaboo and the jump shot bugaboo. Like, those are all pretty big demerits to go, yeah, not the clear-cut best player in the world. And I'm not meaning to like backhand compliment the guy because he's phenomenal.
Right. Like, we don't have to go over the moon complimenting what Giannis has done. Everyone knows that he's a really, really good player. But the question sort of is that if he is able to overcome this next hump and to finally get what so many people sort of downplay what the Karl Malones of the world do, the Charles Barkleys do, because they didn't get that championship, right? That they automatically want to put them a tier below guys who did win the title.
Yeah, Reggie Miller, what have you.
Right. So if he's able to bring his team back and to be consistently playing in these playoffs at this high a level, if he goes for 40 and 17 again or something, like these are getting to some historic numbers just from that. But I think, and I don't want to put words into his mouth, and this is how I interpreted sort of the thought, was that this is in addition to what we've already seen from Giannis. Like, we already knew that he was a premier basketball player in this league. He's the upper 1% of what the NBA has right now.
No doubt.
But does that get him closer to being pushed above a Kevin Durant, above a Seth Curry, like you mentioned? Because you thought about you sort of brought this up at the beginning by saying that he's being sort of a prisoner of the now, and you were talking about sort of winning this particular Finals MVP and all. But like, people wanted to already throw like Luka that like 7 games into the league or something. Like, people already wanted to dismiss what was happening now and started to jump over the Giannis, who's been 8 years into the league. So, I mean, it's not like a complete prisoner of the moment. It's like you said, multiple-time MVP. And if he does do this, then it obviously gives them the championship.
Yeah, does it get him closer? Much closer? Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. But Giannis did not average 40 and 17 during the Atlanta series. Now, granted, there's an injury involved there. He didn't average 40 and 17 against the Brooklyn Nets.
No, but he was going double crazy, putting 30-plus points up in those games to be able to pull them out. Like, he's been great in these playoffs, except for the free throws. So I understand
he's been statistically great, but impactfully, when you watch the times of passivity, both offensively especially, and then also at times on defense, and where he hasn't been always guarding the best forward on the other team, where the Bucks, for whatever reason, maybe it's not Giannis's problem, maybe it was a Budenholzer, what do we call it, a Budenhoozled thing, where he refused to put Giannis on Kevin Durant. Those are big demerits. Giannis is averaging 40 and 17 against the Suns, who are a good defensive team, but this is also a phenomenal matchup, as we have pointed out, for Giannis. The Suns do not have big athletic bodies to throw at him with length. They've got stocky forwards and then DeAndre Ayton, who they're trying to protect to keep out of foul trouble because he's the only athletic true big that they have. So this is the type of matchup where Giannis gets to feast. We did not see Giannis do that to that extent. Again, there's the injury against Atlanta. But when you have John Collins and Clint Capella and you've got that length and athleticism, it was different sledding. So I can't just look at, oh my gosh, he's averaging 40 and 17 in the finals without understanding the context of partially why he is. Would he still be dropping double-doubles and having a phenomenal series against anybody? Yeah, sure he would. But I don't think it'd be 40 and 17 against certain other teams. If he was playing the Lakers, for example, and you're matched up against Anthony Davis, and you got LeBron hanging out there too, or the Clippers and their size, or Rudy Gobert protecting the rim, this is a different stat line that Giannis puts up against those type of teams.
Maybe so, and I wouldn't argue that, but I mean, he's also shooting well over 50% in these series and stuff. Like, he's been efficient with the play that he's been on. Again, I don't want to be a prisoner of just the statistics. So like you said, like there is that sort of that difference in sort of feeling a guy take over a game versus just fill up the stat sheet kind of thing. Like a Kevin Durant, for example, you can feel him sort of take over a game and sort of be that guy. You can feel Steph Curry take over a game and sort of be that guy, not just filling up, getting 7 or 8 threes throughout a game.
Right. And James Harden in that conversation, except for the defensive, issues, but like all three of those guys, and I'm not just basing best player of the year based on killer instinct, but all three of those guys consistently, when healthy throughout this season, showed something that Giannis has struggled to consistently grasp in this role.
I have 2 other topics I want to get to, but real quick, you don't have to go into the depth of this. You can just name them. If Giannis were able to pull his team back from 2-0 and win this series and with finals MVP and was shooting 60% from the field, even if he wasn't averaging 40 and 17, if he's like averaging a paltry 33 and 12 or something like that throughout the series. How many players would you put on the planet in the NBA right now above him as far as best players hooping it up?
I would put Kevin Durant above Giannis. Durant would have won MVP if he had been healthy, I believe.
Would you put Steph?
Steph ever so slightly above Giannis. I mean, we're talking like 2A and 2B. I would put Harden on the same tier as Giannis just because Harden's defense comes and goes so much to the extent that Giannis's killer instinct on offense comes and goes. So those two would be tied, and I would have Jokic like a hair below them. And that's probably all. So, I mean, he's close. Embiid is hanging out in there. There's a few other players obviously hanging out in that conversation. But as far as like best, most impactful player this year, Giannis is right up there in the top 3, and you got some ties and, some honorable mentions going on really close behind him.
Okay. I want to ask you, we just got the NBA merch sales numbers from over the second half of the season, and I wanted to see if you could sort of guess. We got the top 15 most popular NBA jerseys. So how many of I'll give you 5 guesses. I want to see how many of the top 15 you can get. You can probably get, but see if you can get the top 5.
LeBron
is number 1.
Okay. Luka
is number 4.
Trey
Young is number 11.
Okay.
That's wild too, because the second half of the season, Atlanta was hot, and he's a fun young player. You thought more people might get behind him.
So Durant
is number 3. One more guess to see how many of the top 5 you can get.
Jokic is too small market. Giannis, I'll go Giannis.
Giannis is number 2. So it's LeBron 1, Giannis 2, Durant 3, Luka 4. Number 5, everyone's favorite, Jason Tatum. It's on that list.
That might be market based.
Sure.
Celtics fans buy a lot of jerseys, period. So
followed by Booker, Steph Curry, Kyrie, James Harden, Dame Lillard at number 10, Trae Young 11, Joel Embiid 12, Anthony Davis 13, Ja Morant 14, number 15 Kawhi. Any of those surprise you?
Morant being that high as a Grizzly is the only one that's like really surprising, just because that's the smallest market in the league. That's usually the smallest fan base in the league when it comes to like reads on articles and videos and that sort of thing. Obviously, a lot of people outside of Memphis know Ja Morant, but he's not quite to that tier yet where he's a household NBA name. He's just an up-and-comer, so that one's surprising. It surprises me that Harden was below Kyrie at all, but I wonder if that would have happened had the trade, not occurred as part of that. I think Harden probably would have been a little higher.
Interesting. I think that's an interesting take on that. Top 10 most popular teams. I'll give you 3 guesses and then we'll fill it out. Second half of the season.
As far as merch goes?
Yep.
Lakers.
Number 1.
Knicks
number 6.
Nets
number 2. It's right. Lakers, Nets, Suns, Bucks, Bulls. Then the Knicks, 76ers, Celtics, Warriors, and Raptors. How about that?
Well, you got a whole country buying jerseys for you if you're Toronto. So.
That's
And
true.
the city of Tampa Bay.
That's right. It's very it's a very eclectic market you're selling to. Absolutely, I definitely will grant you that. Okay, the other thing I wanted to talk about that I find interesting is that we are almost filled up with coaching hires, Mr. Joel C. Cordes, as
You got to have a coach before the draft. I mean, that's good protocol, I would think.
It's just smart up in the noggin, you know.
You should have a GM too, and every once in a while, there's a team that goes into the draft is like, we don't have a GM yet. It's like, well, you're not a real NBA team this year. Sorry.
Right. What do you want us to do with that, right? Okay, so the most recent ones come as we haven't really talked about these yet. We've been so playoff heavy. As Willie Green looks to be on the verge of being hired from Phoenix to go to New Orleans, and Jamal Mosley going to Orlando from Dallas as the longtime assistant. We haven't even mentioned the Chauncey Billups hiring. I think we may have mentioned Jason Kidd. Chauncey Billups going to Portland, as you guys probably know by now. Jason Kidd to Dallas. I want to mention this because we can get a little into depth on some of these because I think there's a couple interesting aspects to a couple of them. I find it fascinating that it's July 14th and Washington's still waiting on a coach. They seem to be the one that's sort of.
But the two names that they got going, Darvin Ham and Wes Unseld Jr., both guys who are deserving of a shot, and I'm happy to see that those are like the last two names in the running there.
Okay, so let me ask you from your perspective of obviously those names that were mentioned and the others that we have not mentioned.
Rick Carlisle to Indiana.
Yeah. Rick Carlisle and Mayadoka we talked about. Nate McMillan being sort of hired full-time and getting the interim tag off him, and Chris Finch to your Minnesota Timberwolves. But that was way, way long ago.
Right.
Who do you have the most interest in seeing how far they can take their current team? Year one.
I mean, the most experienced and accomplished out of the group is Rick Carlisle. It was really eyebrow raising that he would go back to Indiana, in kind of a middling team. They're in transition. There's some potential there for sure, but that was surprising to me. He's really the only retread hire out of the group. But Rick Carlisle, if you were going to go retread, he has just been a phenomenal coach using what he's got. So he absolutely deserved to have another job anywhere that was going to hire him. I was really surprised that he didn't wind up in a place like Portland, who's trying to take that next step. For them to go completely inexperienced head coach, former player is great. I think that helps that helps Dame Lillard a little bit, although Stotts did play in the NBA briefly, if I remember correctly. But yeah, I mean, Billups as a guy who didn't have any experience, it was surprising that he got the job instead of somebody like Jason Kidd, but it sounded like Lillard would have preferred Billups anyway. So I'm really intrigued there because if that turns out to be a swing and a miss and Billups is in over his head with first year jitters, then all of a sudden you're looking at Damian Lillard going, all right, are we really going to fault him if he starts to get cold feet and wandering eyes, to go somewhere else? And that would be a huge loss, obviously, for a team like Portland.
Yeah, I think Portland's a super interesting situation. It's not just because they hired someone with a very sketchy individual incident that happened in his history. It's because
I've got a take on that too, but we can get to that some other time. But
okay,
continue.
It's because I think what's interesting and what's sort of come out afterwards is that it was sort of thought to be by herself, Becky Hammon, thinking that she was the number two, that she was going, like they wanted Chauncey Billups from pretty much the beginning. Yeah. And as long as things didn't go horrifically in the process, that Becky Hammon was going to be the number two. And I think she said that if someone wants to hire me, they'll find a reason to hire me. But I do think it's interesting that Becky Hammon could have been the coach of the Trailblazers if something had just gone wrong, which is kind of sort of sad to say for her that someone had to sort of lose that position for her to have a chance to sort of get it. But for Becky Hammon to be, at least what she thinks, the number 2 on that list, and she said high praises about Portland, said they were really authentic in the interview. They didn't sort of placate her at all or just, not take her seriously. Do you think that, like, in the next coaching cycle or 2, that we may have a Becky Hammon as a head coach at some point?
I think it'll be the next coaching cycle 2 or 3.
Okay.
I think she's going to go through the same ladder that a lot of former players have had to go through, which is those multiple interviews. You think about how many times Wes Unseld Jr., for example,
oh my God,
has been like a finalist or in the top 3. His is a name that has come up for, like, it seems 4 or 5 years in a row. And Sam Cassell is another guy who still doesn't have a head coaching job, but keeps getting rumored with that. And I think after a while, if you get too many of those finalists and never a shot, people start to just move away from you as an also-ran. But when your name keeps coming up year after year, I think that right opening then will show up somewhere. I think that what Becky has going against her is the same that a lot of the other former players do, is that you're going to give them first-time reigns, but you don't know how that playing ability translates. Now, she's been an assistant for a while already, and that's definitely in her favor. But the more years you put in as an assistant, the more there's that other track record that an owner is willing to sign off on. I don't know if she's going to get a playoff now type team, like, hey, we have to win now. We got to take that next step. I certainly would love to see that. That would be phenomenal. I would, honestly, the ideal would be Pop retiring here in the next year or 2 and Becky Hammon getting the Spurs job. Like, especially when you think of her legacy in San Antonio to begin with. Like, that's the ideal situation. But I don't know. Like, it was great to see her in the finalists. I think she deserves to get more interviews and deserved to get more interviews as part of this whole process. But I don't know that it'll even be next year. It's going to be a ladder. It's the way it's been.
Yeah, it's so hard to sort of be like that first one in, right? For like another, like for someone who may have that barrier. Like I think owners and GMs sort of have a hierarchy of who they think is going to be a good type of candidate for their head coaching spot. And every little thing that you can take off their list against you is great. And the experience is that helping for Becky Hammon. I think there are probably a few, governors who sort of say, maybe we don't need to be the team to be the first to hire a woman, like maybe, let someone else do that. Maybe someone that's, a little more progressive, or as you say, not feeling like that they're ready for the playoffs soon or immediately.
Yeah, or like, honestly, like, an ideal situation. Pop is getting to that age here, and I know
San Antonio. That's why San Antonio is so great. Like there is no one that knows more about her than San Antonio,
right?
Like,
and he, he obviously loves the game. He obviously still has a lot left to give to the game, but you wonder if he would ever consider stepping back a little bit and taking like the lead assistant role for a couple years as kind of a transition where she gets the head coaching spot then. That something like that to me would be ideal. But sometimes in transitions, it's better for the former head person to just step out completely, rip the bandage and not be there, or to move into the front office or something like that. So it may be that an opportunity comes elsewhere if he's not ready to hang it up. But you do get the sense that it's got to be soon for Pop. It can't be too much longer.
Right. Somebody's also got to step into that shadow first. Someone has to be, and whether there's so many people who like to talk about not being the guy to replace the guy, but being the guy to replace the guy that replaced the guy.
Yeah.
And and whether or not that makes it easier for you to sort of say, hey, Becky Hammon is our coach. Now, whatever works is sort of give her the shot, because everything I've read about her, everything I've sort of heard from her when she has spoken, there's nothing to make me think that she can't coach. It's just, it'll be determined based on what they're able to obviously do on the court, the players that she actually has when she does get there. It's not all just her. And
San Antonio's the type of good spot too. And even if you had to fill Pop's shoes, which are enormous, at the same time, San Antonio hasn't been elite in a few seasons, right? And they're in a transition middling period. And that's exactly, I think, the type of team that she probably will get the keys to the car with for her first coaching gig, because that's typically where coaches are getting fired, right? Unless you're totally bad. You get an Orlando situation or something like that, but you're getting a team looking for that next step. And then they're looking around going, former player, experienced person, who's best to take us to that next level, and
who's currently got an office down the hall.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And they're such a patient organization too, that unless like she started her first season like 1-19 or something, like I think you'd be allowed to sort of watch her grow into the position and sort of give her a real shot at having success there.
I mean, heck, Pop won 20 games his first season in San Antonio, right? Everybody and their brother was hurt, so.
Man, it's going to be so good for her to be like, you know what? one of the greatest coaches of all time. I won one fewer game for sure, or something like that. To be able to like, you can't fire me just because I have boobs. Come on now. You know who had boobs? Greg Popovich on that first team he had. Them some boobs on that team. I'm telling you. All right, Joel, that's going to do it for us. Next time we talk, we may have ourselves an NBA champion. But the sharp money right now is on the Bucks. The spread has gotten larger for tonight for Game 5. It's gone.
I'm taking the Bucks in Game 4 as well. Yep, they'll tie it up.
All right, we're looking for a 2-2 get to Game 5. Joel, I think that's how we say goodbye on the Byte. Let's get a good game for Game 3. You and I, Joel, will do it up right.
Sayonara, and we'll see you Sunday.
Yes.